So today, in our continuing quest to annoy every Linux user on the planet, we're going to be installing Windows on something that makes no sense to install Windows on. That, of course, is the Raspberry Pi. Now, I've done a handful of videos featuring this thing, and all of them make much more sense than what we're about to do today, because putting Windows on this thing actually makes it worse than it would be if you just left it with Linux, which I know sounds like something that a Linux user would say about putting Windows on anything, but there are no drivers available for this thing right now, so I'm going into this with the expectation that nothing is going to work. So yeah, pretty much business as usual. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So if you saw my recent episode on struggling to install Windows on a $750 Linux tablet, you'll know that I kinda teased this episode because we had to make use of the Windows on Raspberry Imager that you can use to get a drive set up with a portable Windows 11 ARM installation. However, we're not going to be using that today because I found an even easier method, and that's the Windows on Raspberry Flasher. So this right here is a Linux-based tool, and the really cool thing about it is you can actually do this whole process right from the Raspberry Pi itself by downloading this through the Pi Apps App Store. So we're going to be doing that in a moment here, but I do want to quickly touch on a couple of things to kind of set your expectations here, because we are using a Raspberry Pi 5 with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I bought this thinking that it would allow us to run Windows, in the best possible environment on a Raspberry Pi, but it specifically says that there are no drivers available for it. It doesn't say that about the Pi 4, which I also have, so we may end up reverting back to that if we run into a bunch of problems with the Pi 5. We can get online by utilizing a USB to Ethernet adapter. I've got a handful of those, so that shouldn't be a problem. I have to say though, despite this whole process sounding very experimental and something that most people just aren't really going to want to do, it does seem extremely straightforward. I mean, they've definitely put a lot of work into this to make it extremely user-friendly. They've got this nice wizard you can go through. It's able to download the Windows installer image directly from it, and then you just choose the device you want to write it to, it installs it, and goes through a script, and you're ready to boot from it just like that. Now, as for the parts we're going to need to get this whole thing up and running, first off, of course, is a drive to install Windows on. I'm going to be using this 500 gig SATA SSD, which admittedly is pretty overkill for what we're going to be using it for, but I did want to use an SSD instead of a micro SD card for a couple of reasons. Number one, these are just faster than SD cards, and number two, I am going to be booted off of a micro SD card to go through this whole process, so it's going to be in use. Now, you could certainly use a micro SD to USB adapter if you really wanted to put Windows on a micro SD card, but I think this whole project is already insane enough as it is, so we're not going to be doing that. Next thing, speaking of adapters, we're going to need a SATA to USB 3 cable to hook this up to the Raspberry Pi, which I've read they have no problem booting off of USB devices, so that should not be a problem. And then last but not least, the Raspberry Pi itself, which I have in this lovely 3D printed case because I've got a 3D printer now thanks to today's video sponsor, Bambu Lab, which means that yes, you guys will probably be seeing random 3D printed stuff throughout these videos every so often because I've been very obsessed with this thing. As you can see, look at all this stuff that I've printed. I mean, it's just been so freaking cool. I mean, I have been wanting to 3D print stuff for such a long time, just never got around to getting a printer, but then Bambu Lab got in contact with me and sent me over their P1S combo unit a while back, and I mean, I was so surprised at how easy this was to set up. It was pretty much plug and play. I didn't know what to expect, really. I had zero experience with 3D printing, but I was able to get through the whole setup process right from their mobile app and was printing within 30 minutes of cracking the box open. The combo kit also comes with one of their AMS units, which holds up to 4 additional filament rolls so that you can print more complex designs that utilize more than one color, which really came in handy when I was printing this little toolbox here. This is the longest and most complex print that I've done. It took over 8 hours to finish, but I really like the result. I mean, this thing is awesome for just holding all the little parts and accessories that I got with my printer. So yeah, it's been so much fun messing around with this thing, and I have burned through a lot of filaments so far, as you can see, because there are so many designs available. I mean, if you go over to Maker World and search for literally anything, you're bound to find something that you can print. Bambu Lab is currently celebrating their 3rd anniversary through July 15th, where you can save up to 40% on their printers. So be sure to hit the link below and check them out, and huge thanks again to Bambu Lab for making today's video possible. Alright, so we've got my Pi 5 running the latest release of Raspberry Pi OS, and we're going to go ahead and download the War Flasher to it, which we have to do through the Pi Apps App Store, which I've actually never used before, so this will be neat to see. All we have to do is copy this terminal command, and we will paste that into here. And just like that, we've got an icon on our desktop, so we'll open that up, and it appears to be an executable script. I suppose we'll just execute it, and we get to this menu. So I imagine maybe under Tools, Windows Flasher, there it is. So we're going to open that up, and it tells you what it is here, how to use it. So we're just going to click on Install, opens up a terminal window, and runs that installer. And then it just finished up, closed out of the terminal window, and says that it installed. So yeah, this is really neat. I very well may end up doing some more projects on the Raspberry Pi utilizing this little app store, because you can see we got a whole bunch of stuff in here. So that's neat. I imagine if we go now into accessories, yeah, there it is at the bottom, War Flasher. So we'll open that up. Hold up! We got Hi there, BotSpot here, developer of War Flasher. The Windows on Raspberry project seems to be dying. Wi-Fi still does not work. The Pi 500, CM5, and Pi 5 16 gig won't boot it. Really? Because that's what I have right here. This is a Pi 5 16 gig. So does that mean we're not? It says that many of the devs have left. So okay, maybe we can't even do this. But it looks like this person started a new project to solve these issues called BVM, and it runs Windows in a virtual machine on Pi OS. Wi-Fi works, audio playback works, everything that works on WOR works, and you can pass through USB devices for Windows to directly use. And you can use Raspberry Pi OS on the outside at the same time. So, okay, that, I guess, sounds like a better solution. So apparently the Pi 5 doesn't even boot, or the Pi 5 16 gig anyways, doesn't even boot this. So we're just gonna try it anyway. I mean, we've gone this far, and like I said, I do have a Pi 4. It mentions down here that if you want to do it with a Pi 4, you have to choose an older Windows 11 version. Did I miss something on the GitHub page? I feel like I would have seen that. I mean, I saw it just said Raspberry Pi 5 support is here and it runs fast. Like, I got the Pi 5 16 gig thinking that, oh, it'll have more RAM, so Windows should run better on it. But let me just see here. Can we do a search on this page? 16, it can install Windows on other drives greater than 16 gigs, so that's nothing about RAM. 16 space GB, that's just the same thing just down here. Create a recovery drive to install Windows on other larger than 16 gig drives. So I guess that's not mentioned on the GitHub page. You only see that when you download it. What the heck? We're just gonna try this anyway. I mean, I guess this is going to be a waste of time, but like I said, we've got the Pi 4, and I also want to try out that other project that was mentioned where we can run it in a virtual machine, because that sounds like a better solution. So we're going to plug in my 500 gig SSD here to one of the USB 3 ports on the Pi, and then we're going to install Windows 11 on a Pi 5, ENUS, and it's found our SSD, so we'll click next. About 4.2 gig of files needs to be downloaded to the system storage before flashing can begin, but your system has 15.8 gigabytes of RAM. Everything can be downloaded to RAM if you prefer. Choose this if you don't have enough space. Well, I've got plenty of space on the SD card. I would rather it just do that, so we'll use my home folder. So we'll click on flash, and it says it's finished. So, well, at least with this first portion, because then it has to go through the rest of the installer once we boot off the SSD. And then we'll go ahead and restart, and we should be able to get to the boot menu by holding down the space bar. Or maybe not. Well, apparently this is an update we have to install. So I just found this Tom's Hardware article here, and it just tells us to run sudo apt update and then full upgrade, and then we just run this command here. Bootloader up to date. Yeah, it's up to date. So, oh, we have to open a raspi config. Okay. So there are a couple things we have to do. And then we go to advanced options, bootloader version, and choose latest. So advanced options. We can change the boot order from here. Yeah, we want boot from NVMe before trying USB and then SD card. So that sounds good. NVMe/USB is the default boot device, so we shouldn't even need to access the boot menu now. So let's just go down and hit finish and restart. Maybe it won't even boot off of this. I mean, it did say it failed to boot on the Pi 5 with 16 gigs of RAM in that message we got. So, like I said, this is probably a complete waste of time. Okay, I don't know how well you can see this, but the display is on. It's got a green light, and it's kind of just flashing for a split second, like it's turning on, like it's trying to get a signal, and then it just goes off, and it's continually doing that. But you have to really, like, I don't know how well it shows up on video. So, maybe this is what the author means by it doesn't boot on a Pi 5 with 16 gigs of RAM. And I wonder why it's specifically the one with 16 gigs of RAM. It's kind of strange. But, I mean, you can see we got a light on here on the SSD, like it has recognized it. And, I mean, we can try just to yank power from this and plug it back in. And no, that's just doing the exact same thing. Well, I am curious about this BVM project, so I think what we're going to do is, since we already have the Pi 5 hooked up, we'll try that out, and then switch over to the Pi 4 I have and try to get a version of Windows running on it, you know, without using a virtual machine. So this is a Windows 11 QEMU KVM on ARM Linux. What to expect? A full Windows 11 ARM virtual machine on ARM Linux, thanks to KVM, which is a kernel-based virtual machine. This utilizes virtualization instead of emulation, resulting in no significant speed difference compared to installing Windows directly. This kernel-based virtual machine, I wonder if this is similar to how Win4Lin worked. Win4Lin, if you remember, I made that video earlier this year. That was a very early Windows on Linux piece of software that would actually patch the Linux kernel to run Windows at native speeds. So, to get started, you just have to clone the repo here, or install BVM from Pi Apps. Okay, so we'll just do that since we already have this downloaded. I imagine that will be under Tools, just like the, or maybe not. Is it not in here? Because this is where the Windows Flasher is. Oh, it might be under Emulation. Yep, Botspot Virtual Machine. And so we will install that. I think I am still going to use this 500 gig SSD though, because the SD card in here is only like 64 gigs, and I want to give Windows a decent size hard drive image to work with. So we'll just hold off on plugging that in for now until we get this all installed. There we go, installed. Close out of that, close out of Pi Apps. We'll leave this GitHub page open for now, because I imagine we'll have to refer back to it at some point. And it does not put it under accessories. That's interesting. So it might be under, what, programming, sound and video, internet, office. It's under office, okay. And so let's make a new virtual machine. Operation succeeded. Please close this terminal and proceed to the next step. Edit configuration file. So you have to edit everything in a text editor. So your Windows username and password, we'll just make that Michael, and we'll make the password MJD. Download language, English US. You can de-bloat it. Okay, that's nice. So change this to false if you don't want Microsoft bloatware ads or Windows Defender removed during first boot. We will keep that enabled. Choose the initial size of the disk image. It can go as low as 20 if you encounter insufficient free disk space error. This drive can be expanded later. We'll go with 40. You have RDP port. We shouldn't have to mess with that. Force RAM allocation. It's recommended to leave this commented for BVM to choose a sensible value. We'll just leave it as default. I imagine we can leave most of this at the default values, all these things that are commented out. You can disable BVM updates. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that you can mess with. So we'll just, yeah, I don't see anything in here about the location of the hard disk image. I imagine we're going to create that next. So we'll save this, close out of it, and then download components. So this is where it downloads the image, and then it just saves it into our home folder in a Win11 folder installer.iso. So yeah, it gets it directly from Microsoft, which is nice. And I'm assuming this is the latest version, 24H2 English ARM64. So this is going to take a little while. And actually, I want to see where, yeah, war flasher files. So here is, yeah, install.wim. So there's what it downloaded. We are going to get rid of this because we do not need it. We'll move to trash, yes, and then we'll empty the trash. So this folder right here is where it's currently downloading the ISO, and then there's our config file and a couple other things that I assume, well, what else are we going to do after this? Prepare for installation, install, and then run Windows 11. But in the meantime, we got a little bit of waiting to do. And all that prep is done, so now we got to install Windows 11, which will actually start up the VM. And there we go. So yeah, from here on out, it should just be a standard Windows 11 setup process. And oh, it looks like it's just automated, which that makes sense because we did have to enter in like the username and password and all that in that configuration document. So yeah, our PC will restart several times. This is probably going to take a while, so we're going to give it a while. Well, I got some great news. Windows 11 installed successfully, and it also ran through a post-install debloater script to just get rid of a whole bunch of stuff in the background. So I didn't actually record that portion because I did step away from this system for a while. But if we go in here, we shouldn't anyways have as many applications in here like you normally would. Also notable, we are on the network. If we go into Microsoft Edge here, we can download a couple applications and, you know, mess around with this thing a little bit. That being said, I do want to save some time so that we can try this out on my Raspberry Pi 4 and go with that first method to install Windows onto this SSD and try to actually boot off of it and see if that gives us any different results. Speaking of this SSD, I still have not figured out a way to copy over this Windows install to it. It seems to just utilize whatever, you know, default device, like the one that you're booted off of, which in this case is the SD card. I didn't see any option to change that. I assume we could go in and try to like move the folder over to the SSD and just run it from there, but we have enough space on this SD card to run this Windows install, so I'm not too concerned about it at this point. We've already come this far. So yeah, we'll skip through all of Microsoft Edge's nonsense, and let's just go and do a search for Windows 11 ARM apps, because I found this website. I think it was, yeah, this one right here. This is actually what I used in my Windows 11 on the FileTab Duo video to just grab a couple of things. There's a whole bunch of applications in here. So why don't we get what would be interesting? I mean, we did TuxKart in that last video. That was under games. Let me actually scroll down here and see what other games we got. Oh, we could get the Windows 95 Electron app. Oh my gosh, I remember doing a demo video on this when it first came out. It's cool to see that this is still going. When was this version released? 4.0? This February 21st. Wow, so this is still being updated. Yeah, why don't we grab this and create a virtual machineception thing going on. So we want to grab the ARM64 EXE. And while we're waiting for that installer to load, I'm going to go ahead and open up Task Manager just so we can take a look at the current system performance. I haven't really messed around with this a whole lot off camera, but it's been pretty decent as I've been using it here. I mean, you guys have been able to see, like, we were able to launch Edge. I think it launched in a pretty decent amount of time. But let's go to performance here. And so the CPU is recognized as a VERT 10.0, and oh yeah, there's oh, you don't even have to install this, it just runs. Okay, that's nice. So yeah, can we move this? We don't have like a window title bar, but we can, okay, there we go. We can kind of just move it around like that. You just got to grab right up here at the top. So yeah, VERT 10.0, 2.4 gigahertz. It's utilizing 14 gigs of the 16 that we have available to the system. And I imagine you could change this RAM utilization if you wanted to, and, you know, allocate more RAM usage to the Raspberry Pi, to the host system, and, you know, decrease the RAM in here. Here's our SSD, Red Hat VirtIO SCSI disk drive. Really? Red Hat and SCSI. Those are two things I didn't think I would see in the same line of text on Windows 11, but there you go. And then Ethernet, we have a Red Hat VirtIO Ethernet adapter number 2. So number 1 is missing, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you can see here the disk usage is like cranked to the max, but memory is looking pretty good. CPU, we are, you know, I mean, obviously we've got this application running in the background, and it is actually taking a while to start up here. So why don't we just do kind of what I did in the, I almost said rock chip, which wouldn't be inaccurate, the FileTab Duo video, and just push this over to the side here, and so we can keep track of our CPU and memory usage and all that. And okay, I guess it was installing stuff in the background, because this is the user interface I remember, and sure enough, that Windows 95 boot screen image just went away. So now if we were to close out of this and launch Windows 95, it should just come up, yeah, with that. So that was just kind of like for the install process. So we can start Windows 95, there we go. We can shrink this window down if we want to, because I want to be able to see the, oh my gosh, yeah, we've lost the cursor. Well, it's inside of the 95 VM. How do we get it back? Oh my gosh, yeah, this mouse cursor is super wonky, and you can see that like marquee there in the web browser is lagging a little bit there. Well, more than a little bit, rather substantially actually. And yeah, how do, like, I want to get the mouse, okay, there we go, escape. It was what gets the mouse cursor back. I do want to shrink this down, not that. I want to grab this from the corner here and shrink it down. And oh yeah, that CPU is maxed out. We are at 100% full usage. By the way, I don't know why I always default to trying to break everything and push everything to its limits. I mean, we could just use Windows 11 and, you know, do something like normal people would do and try to run, like, I don't know, Microsoft Office or something. But no, we got to run a Windows 95 virtual machine and try to just, you know, push this poor thing to its limits. Another quick thing I want to do is open up Device Manager. And oh my gosh, look at all those unknown devices. So okay, similar stuff going on here that we saw in the Find Tab Duo video. The interesting thing I saw when you went into, which I don't think I was actually on camera for this, but if we go into Show More Options, Display Settings, the way this is actually working is through a like RDP session, like Remote Desktop. Because it says here you cannot change display settings from a remote session. So that's how this whole thing is working, which is rather interesting. Another cool thing about BVM Connect is if we move this window out of the way, you have the option to mount the Windows virtual hard disk as a drive within Raspberry Pi OS, so you can open it up and just write files to it directly. Now, it doesn't look like you can do that while Windows is running, because this option, like I'm clicking on it, it doesn't seem to do anything. It doesn't actually register that I'm like pressing the button. But if we close out of this, and then wait for this window to close here, and see there it is, RDP viewer exited. So yeah, this is your console output window basically, so you can see what it's all doing here. So assuming you disconnected, press any key to reconnect or Control C to exit. We'll press Control C, and then now it's actually mounting the drive. So it did that right when I close out of it. So here is the Windows virtual hard disk. We can go in here. I mean, heck, we can just frickin' delete the Windows folder if we want to and make the system unbootable. Yeah, why don't we do that? That sounds like a great idea. So we'll move Windows to the trash can. Yes, we want to delete. We've got permissions to do it. Oh, no, maybe not. Error removing file. Read-only file system. Okay, so you cannot write to it. That's interesting. So you can only read. Huh, okay. Well, you can access the Windows virtual drive in a read-only fashion. You can expand the disk if you want to make the drive larger, and you also have USB pass-through to allow the Windows VM to see USB devices that you have plugged in to the Pi. Pretty cool. And like this screen that we saw earlier in the War Flasher said, I think that this BVM tool is going to give us better results than just installing Windows directly onto this SSD, using the War Flasher and trying to boot it onto Raspberry Pi 4, but we're going to try it anyway because, I mean, what the heck do we have to lose? So we're going to get our Pi 4 all wired up here. We'll also plug in the SSD and give it some power. Boom, there we go. So now it's just a quick hop over to Firefox to download the Pi Apps App Store. Or actually, we don't technically have to run Firefox, I just don't have the command memorized. And that is done, so we've got the Pi Apps icon right here on the desktop. We're just gonna go through this and download the installer, and that was again under Tools, and it's the Windows Flasher. So, we'll install that, and install Windows 11 on a Pi 4. Hit next and choose English US, our 500 gig drive, and I think we're good. So let's just have it do its thing, and hopefully we'll actually be able to boot into Windows 11 this time. But first, of course, we need to go through the first boot stuff and modify the boot devices, which means we need to get into raspi config again. And what was it under? Advanced Options, Boot Order. And we change it to B2. NVMe/USB is the default boot device. Perfect. So we will finish and restart. All right, good sign. So we got the boot screen here. And from what that image said before, I know that I kind of went past it really quickly, but I do have the guide pulled up on the computer behind me. And apparently, it just stays on this screen here for 30 minutes. So it looks like it's frozen right now. I mean, because it got to this bar, got to the end. I can press enter. I mean, it doesn't actually, advance through it right now. But apparently this is normal, so it's just going to sit here for around a half hour, and we should then see that next screen, go through the rest of the setup process, because we're not done yet. There is some more stuff that it has to do, and then we should hopefully be running Windows 11. But this is good, because we did not get this far on the Raspberry Pi 5, so things are looking promising. Okay, so major development. It turns out that I had actually installed the wrong version of Windows to this SSD. If you remember earlier on in the video when I was reading through that splash screen we saw on the War Flasher before actually going into the program, it mentioned how the latest version of Windows 11 doesn't work on the Raspberry Pi 4 and you have to select a different version. Now, I thought that when we selected Raspberry Pi 4 as the device from that drop-down menu, that it would just automatically choose that since it can install the latest Windows version to it. However, that's not the case. It just downloaded the latest version of Windows that it could get, which resulted in it hanging on that startup screen for much longer than 30 minutes. I actually did 2 attempts of this, and they both lasted about 45 minutes to an hour, and it just did not get past that screen. I went back to the installer, manually selected the version of Windows 11 that it told you to pick, and it got past that boot screen in less than 2 minutes. So we're here at the Windows on Raspberry pre-installation environment, where we have to choose our destination disk, which is going to be the solid-state drive. So we'll say next. And then here you can choose the edition of Windows. We'll just go with Pro because, I mean, why the heck not? And now it will prepare the disk and go through the rest of the installation. Now, if you were going to go through with this, it is important to note what capacity that you're going to be installing Windows on, because that actually will affect if you can install it to the device that we put the installer on. I know that probably sounds confusing, but what we did earlier in Raspberry Pi OS was we wrote the installer image to this SSD. Now we've booted from it and we are installing Windows from that installer to the same drive, which it can only do if the hard drive is larger than 25 gigabytes. If it's less than that, you would have to put the installer on a separate drive, boot off of it, and then install it to a completely separate hard drive, unless that hard drive is less than 7 gigabytes in size, in which case it's not usable at all. I know, that's like a major mouthful there, but the point is, we are here booted into the installer, currently installing Windows to the same drive, so things are looking good. Let's hope they stay that way. And check this out, everybody. We made it to the OOBE, and we are just waiting for the next screen to load. I clicked on the region and, hit next. So, yeah, we're going to have to, of course, go through and do the whole bypass online account nonsense, because Microsoft makes you do that. In fact, I guess I can just do that right now, because I've got this command memorized since I use it so much. So we're going to press Shift F10 to open up command prompt, which maybe we should have waited for this next screen to load before we did that, because I have already noticed, like, this animation when it came in was pretty laggy. It's taking way longer than I've had on any other system for this next screen to come up, where you pick, I think your keyboard layout is next. See, look at me saying I already have done this so many times I can't even tell you what the second screen is. I'm pretty sure it's the keyboard layout. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's type in OOBE/bypass NRO. I think it's the other slash, isn't it? Yeah, it is. There we go. Oh, look at this beautiful animation, guys. What's that, like 2 FPS we got going on? Jeez. Well, from what we've seen so far, I don't think we're going to be spending a whole lot of time in Windows 11 on this thing, because this is already way worse than it is on the Raspberry Pi 5. So, yes, we're in the US. Gotta have it take its sweet old time here. Well, 10 minutes later, it just came up with something went wrong. You can try again or skip for now. OOBE keyboard. Did it not detect the keyboard? I mean, I have the mouse plugged into the keyboard, so at least the USB hub on it is working. But I guess, I mean, can we just skip the whole thing? That would be fantastic. Oh no, it's the OOBE keyboard layout selection. That's what it was trying to bring up. For some reason that failed, which very well might be an indication as to what we're going to experience for these other screens. Oh, it detected Ethernet. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, it said that there were no drivers available for the Raspberry Pi 5 going through this method, not the 4, so we very well may actually have some proper drivers here. Ah, it's checking for updates, okay. Which actually, I don't know if we want it to get updates. No, because then it's going to try to update to the latest version of Windows. You know what? Screw it. I'm yanking the cable. I don't want it to update anything. I want to just get through this frickin' setup. And something went wrong again on the OOBE settings selector. So we'll skip past whatever that was. Okay, I've seriously been going through this setup for 20 minutes. Like, this is... This is the longest that I've ever spent going through a Windows 11 OOBE. Okay, it finally... Gosh, no. Oh, we have to try again? You can't skip it? Oh my gosh. Okay, well that's a problem. Okay, well, I just opened up Task Manager to, like, see if we can just kill this process. And this poor CPU, man, oh my gosh, look at this thing. It is just full blast, maxed out. And then we've got our RAM, which is, I mean, we've got that, like, 3 gig RAM limitation. It says we have 4, but it's got 1.1 for hardware reserved. Well, I can see why now the author said, just don't do this, because, I mean, holy cow, this is pretty unbearable. I think this is easily the worst thing that I've tried to put Windows 11 on. I mean, even that old, like, 2008 laptop that did not meet the system requirements at all ran it better than this. So, okay, Microsoft account, can we just end that? Okay, that got us to the desktop. But is it going to try to just restart the system? Well, it did relaunch it. Oh no. Oh no. No. No! It's... Oh my gosh. Okay, one last-ditch effort to get to a desktop. Apparently, if you press Control-Shift-F3 while you're in the OOBE, it will reboot the system into an audit mode, where you can configure some settings before the end user would go through the out-of-box experience. So this should get us to the desktop, where we can log in as the admin account. Okay, so we've got this system preparation tool, where we can just have it. Okay, so that's neat. You can change it if you don't want to enter the out-of-box experience. You can go back into the audit mode. I've actually never messed around with this before, but it gets us to the desktop. And, you know, we can do whatever we want. We can try to install programs. But honestly, I ain't gonna do that, because this poor thing has been just really struggling. I mean, you can see here, like, the CPU usage. Okay, well, now it's actually not as bad. It has really stabilized. We're now at 11%, 9% usage. We're just sitting here idle, of course, not really doing anything. But I guarantee you, if I start, like, opening up the start menu, and... we don't even have all these programs, like they're still loading in here, but we can go in and try to open up, I don't know, what's like a really minimal thing, like Notepad, right? Where's that at? Let's open up Notepad. A new version of Notepad is available. Holy cow. Yeah, we're about like 42.22. It's actually, this is way better. I mean, stuff is launching. Like, let's try to open up Edge here. This will be a real good test, because, oh wow, that opened up really quick. Okay. So yeah, it was just the out-of-box experience, you utilizing a ridiculous amount of usage. Although now you can see, like, we're back at 100% max usage because, you know, Edge is a major resource hog because it's Chromium-based. I mean, you saw that the network adapter worked. It did recognize that. Let me open up Device Manager and just see what it currently recognizes. So we have some unknown devices, but definitely not as many as we saw on the Raspberry Pi 5 with the VM. Okay, we've got audio. We have, under monitors, just generic monitor. We don't even have the display adapters drop down. Of course, I mean, keep in mind, we have not gone through the full out-of-box experience process yet. We haven't done the update, so it very well may have ended up downloading that at some point. But, you know, we have all this stuff so far on the Raspberry Pi 5 Windows VM as well. So I think, I mean, it definitely goes without saying that is a much better experience. And also the fact that you can still, like, quickly get back to your Linux environment and do whatever you want to do there. So honestly, I think I'm going to end the video here, because I really just don't feel like stressing this poor little Raspberry Pi, which, by the way, is like, I can feel the heat, like, radiating off this thing just by putting my hand close to it. I mean, it is is getting really, really hot. So I'm going to put this thing out of its misery and shut down the computer. And that, my friends, has been trying to install and successfully installing Windows 11 on both a Raspberry Pi 5 in a VM and natively on a Raspberry Pi 4. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, get subscribed, maybe consider becoming a patron or a channel member to get early access, sponsor-free access to these videos before anybody else. But either way, I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.